So the first roster projection as of right now is pretty simple for the Texas Rangers, as their only main injury is to Brett Martin, who is on the 60-day IL. Obviously, there will be battles in spring training, and there will be injuries. Hopefully, it's not to any of our big cats like Marcus Semien, Corey Seager, and Nathaniel Lowe. Obviously, those guys are locks, but let's dive into it. Obviously, like I said, Marcus Semien will be our starting second baseman. Corey Seager, starting shortstop. Nathaniel Lowe, starting first baseman. No doubts about that. And then going through, of course, Adolis Garcia will be in the lineup for Jonah Heim will make it. Josh Young is going to be given every single opportunity to be the starting third baseman. Mitch Garver, we know will be the primary DH, but will also get a chance to play catcher as well, probably every fourth day. As we know, Jonah Heim secured that role last season, put in a really good work behind the plate, but also showed something with the bat that flamed out towards the end of the season. So maybe if we don't have to rely too much with Jonah Heim behind the plate, putting in Garver a little bit could help out Heim's offensive numbers. Brad Miller will be an interesting guy in camp because he sucked last year. There's no question about that. But from all the reports from the Texas Rangers, including Chris Young, it sounds like Brad Miller is making the Texas Rangers roster going into the 2023 season. That doesn't mean he's going to be on the roster for the entirety of the season, given that would have to be a poor performance, of course. That means if he continues to play like he did in the 2022 season, he's getting DFA'd 100%. But the Texas Rangers firmly believe that he can bounce back. For his career, he crushes right-handed pitching, and that can be a great supplement to Robbie Grossman to platoon that left field position. So obviously Robbie Grossman is making the roster. We obviously just signed him a few days ago to platoon left field. Leody Taveras, those guys, of course, are locks. I think for the Texas Rangers, that starting lineup, we've known the locks for a few months now, but the bench is where it gets interesting. So I think all the spots on the bench, besides, you could say, the first bench spot, are up for grabs. So you have to consider a few things when going over the bench. You have to consider platoons, versatility, and can this guy eventually impact the lineup every single day if somebody gets hurt. So the guys that I have in the for the bench for the Texas Rangers is Josh Smith, Mark Mathias, and Clint Frazier. And yes, I did not include Ezekiel Duran and Bubba Thompson. And let me explain that. So first and foremost, I still view, in my eyes, Ezekiel Duran as a top prospect. Of course, he's not a top 100 prospect anymore because if you play a few major league games, that status goes away pretty quickly. But this is a guy that we were raving about a year ago. He gets to start the season at AA, and then Andy Ibanez doesn't do well at the major leagues. Brad Miller isn't doing well, so we need Ezekiel Duran. He gets the call, doesn't do the best, but completely skips AAA, and he's still really young, 23 years old. I really think the best thing for him would be spending a year at AAA, developing his swing against more advanced pitchers. That way, you're not just wasting Ezekiel Duran for a bench spot at the major leagues. And if you look at Clint Frazier and Mark Mathias, those are two guys. They're 28 years of age. So technically, you can say, oh, you're wasting Mark Mathias and Clint Frazier. Not really. You kind of signed them or trade for them to be those types of players, to be those platoon players, but you trade for Ezekiel Duran to be an impact player down the line. And the reason why I don't have Bubba Thompson here is because if the Rangers truly believe in him being an impact player, then why would you have him in the major leagues just to be a pinch runner, because Clint Frazier and Josh Smith both provide good value as pinch runners off the bench. Obviously, they're not as fast as Bubba Thompson, but if you look at the other things they can do, Josh Smith can play every single position besides catcher, and I think he can hit better than Bubba Thompson. And if you look at Clint Frazier, if you get him back to his 2020 form, this guy could be a regular in the everyday lineup. And even if you can't, he's already a better platoon versus left-handed pitching than Bubba will ever be, in my opinion. I really don't believe in Bubba as a hitter, and even as right now, I think Clint Frazier is way above Bubba just as a platoon against lefties. So that really helps you out in the end game for strategy for Bruce Bochy. You don't have to have a liability for pinch hitters. Yes, Bubba Thompson is a great pinch runner, but I think that gives you a bunch of versatility, because Jonah Heim isn't the best versus right-handed pitching. So some days you can have Garver play catcher, and then versus the right-handed pitchers to give Jonah Heim a break. I'm not saying Jonah Heim won't play versus right-handed pitching, and maybe you move Miller to DH, hoping that Miller bounces back, and you can have Smith or Robbie Grossman in left field. That's on occasion, and sometimes for Adolis' career, he hasn't been that great versus left-handed pitching. That's kind of the reverse splits. So this in 2022, he was actually good against lefties, but let's just say that it goes back to his career norms. You could platoon Matthias and Frazier with Garcia versus left-handed pitching, but also let's just say Leody Taveras doesn't hit well in 2023. You could use Smith, Matthias, or Frazier to play one of the outfield spots or DH. I think you can move Adolis Garcia to center field to temporarily figure that out, because obviously we're sitting right here in spring training and we're thinking, okay, everything is good to go. We are hoping that everything turns out or pans out, but it's baseball. People are going to get hurt. People are going to underperform. So we have to be ready for those situations. And Josh Smith, Mark Matthias, and Clint Frazier, those guys are not going to be complaining that they're on the bench, because a year ago, Matthias is in AAA. He's just happy to be in the major leagues. Clint Frazier, another guy, is just happy to get a second chance at the major leagues. And Josh Smith, I feel like it's in his character to not get, I think he's just a humble guy, and he knows that in due time he'll get his chance to just be the platoon guy, versatility guy, and provide a good glove. So that's the hitters right now. And for the pitching side, I think this is interesting. Obviously, we have our 5 starters. That is set in stone. Jacob deGrom, Martin Perez, Nathan Eovaldi, John Gray, and Andrew Heaney. We pretty much bought that rotation this offseason. So that's not changing unless there's an injury. But the cool or the interesting thing is the bullpen. I do think Jose Leclerc and Jonathan Hernandez will make the team. Obviously, I still think they're our best bullpen options when they get back to being healthy. But going on to the next option, I think Josh Sborz makes the team over Joe Barlow, because Josh Sborz has elite closer-like stuff, but he would only be working in a 1-inning role, so probably 6 or 7 inning guy. And the reason why I haven't winning the job over Joe Barlow is because Joe Barlow still has 3 options remaining. So you can send him down to AAA, have him work on his stuff, because he wasn't performing too well towards the end of the season. But Josh Sborz has 0 options remaining. So if the Rangers really want to capitalize on their trade that they made 2 years ago to acquire Josh Sborz, this would be the time to let him run with it. So that's why I have Josh Sborz making the roster. And the 3 guys I just mentioned are all 1-inning guys: Jose Leclerc, Jonathan Hernandez, and Josh Sborz. But this is where it gets interesting. Next 5 pitchers I have are all multi-inning relievers. I have Danny Duffy, Jake Odorizzi, Taylor Hearn, Brock Burke, and Spencer Howard. The reason I have this is because this is the way that the game is changing. You need multi-inning relievers in order to most effectively use your bullpen, but also you need the multi-inning relievers, especially for the Texas Rangers, because Jacob deGrom, Nathan Eovaldi, Andrew Heaney, and last year John Gray have all dealt with injury issues. So if right out of the gate you don't want them to push it innings-wise, you have Danny Duffy, who has been a starter all his life. Same with Jake Odorizzi. Taylor Hearn recently just moved out of the starter role to be a 2-inning guy. Same with Brock Burke. And Spencer Howard was a starter last year. And I think Spencer Howard could be reversible with Glenn Otto. Both of those guys, I think, could take a step up in the bullpen. I think their stuff would play up. So this is what I think the Rangers opening day roster could look like. Granted, if there isn't any injuries. And if there is any injuries, I will make an opening day roster projection 2.0. But the three shockers that make the roster, Danny Duffy, Clint Frazier, both of those are non-roster invitees, and Spencer Howard. So let me know what you think on these predictions.